Hello and welcome to Rough Cut Film Review. This is going to be quite a quick review, so before I start I just wanted to say, remember you can get in touch on roughcutfilmreview@gmail.com, and I never say this, but thanks ever so much for listening to the programme, and thank you very much for listening in increasing numbers. There's all sorts of new ways to listen to Rough Cut Film Review now, so it's all quite exciting. So please do tell your friends about me, tell your girlfriend, tell your boyfriend, tell your uncle that's a bit creepy, tell your grandma, tell your parents, tell people on Twitter, tell your Facebook friends you're not really friends with that you barely remember. Tell all these people, and I'm sure they greatly appreciate the insight of Rough Cut Film Review. So anyway, Kill List. It's Ben Wheatley's arguably best known film. Obviously Ben Wheatley made A Field in England, which I reviewed earlier in the week. Kill List. We start off with the protagonist. He's a man. He's got an attractive European wife and a son, all living together in a nice brick house. They are living the middle class dream. But early doors we find out that all is not well. We find out that he's been out of work for something like 8 months. He was with the British Army, but now he doesn't seem to be. But he's complaining about non-specific sort of back pains. But his wife says that's just an excuse for him not to work. He then counters that she's been spending far too much money. She says money's tight, etc. etc. Suddenly he says, well, hang on a second, how have you spent £40,000 in 8 months? So there's a lot of tension below the surface. His friend, who is also out of the military, a Northern Irishman, comes over for an intimate dinner party with the two couples, the two friends and their wife and girlfriend. The tension around the table very quickly ramps up and very, very quickly explodes. Not in a people throwing things at each other necessarily, not in a particularly violent way, but it's done so brilliantly in terms of real life tension. It's done really, really well, and we know without a shadow of a doubt things are not well. At the centre of this film really is the relationship between the two ex-soldiers, who we find out quickly have turned hitmen. All the money pressures force the protagonist to go back to work with a job that his friend, his Northern Irish friend, has sorted out, and everything starts to go badly wrong and become strange and surreal. Now, what really impresses you early on in the film is just how authentic everything looks and how authentic the dialogue is, particularly between the two friends. And in all honesty, if you've had a long-term relationship with somebody, I'm sure you'll recognise some of that stuff with someone really, you know how to get at each other kind of thing. That's all really, really good. Plot-wise, the two hitmen are employed by a wealthy type to kill 3 people, hence the kill list from the title. But very early on, things are not quite right. What's quite interesting about our protagonist is, although he is a nice guy to his friends, he's loyal, he is a good father fundamentally, he wants to provide for his family, and he's vaguely patriotic. He's got a sense of duty. Obviously he was in the British military. At the same time, there are tensions within him as a character, and he is not only willing to do very nasty things, but also actually he enjoys doing nasty things. There may be some spoilers here, so if you're worried about that, please do switch off for a second. But the film this is most like, really, in terms of its tone, is probably The Wicker Man. It's very dark, it's very unexpected, nasty things happen, and it's not in a sort of Pulp Fiction way. I mean, there is a scene where there is an element of torture there, and it's very authentic and nasty, but the nastiness comes in a much more shocking and fundamental and intellectual way. It's a fascinating film. It's very, very difficult to look away, and I have these particular images from the film which I think are now seared onto my brain forever. And much like The Wicker Man, the ending is absolutely unforgettable. Interestingly enough, actually, I'd seen some of the reviews before this was released in the cinema. People were saying, literally reviewers were saying, they had to walk out of the cinema because it was just so intense. And I went into this expecting it to be a hitman thriller, nasty British horror film. So when I actually saw it, and it turns out to be, it sort of is those things, but at the same time it's very difficult to quantify, and it's far more intellectual, it's far more art house. And the more I think about it, and I think about how lonely the characters are, how isolated they are, how lonely their world is, and how they really don't know many people, they're really on their own, I think it really is one of those films, the more thought you put into it, the more you think about the reasons for things happening, the symbolism that's in there, the more you get out of the film. And when I first saw this, I really, really wasn't impressed. I was disappointed. I had a beer on the go. I was expecting a nasty horror film, and I thought, what on earth was all that about? So I saw A Field in England just last week, thought it was fantastic, and so here I am again watching this, and I was completely wrong with my first interpretation. I think this is a really, really, really strong film, and the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. Universally, it's fantastic, and it's just so unnerving all the way through. Ben Wheatley is a very, very interesting filmmaker. I did think he was quite pretentious and pompous, but having seen his work a bit more and paying a bit more attention to it, I think that he's an absolutely fantastic filmmaker. If someone can get in touch, can you please watch Kill List, and can you come back to me and answer the question why? Why do these events unfold? Why does it happen to our protagonist and not anybody else? Because I've got my own sort of thoughts on this, and I'm aware of spoilers here, so I'm not saying too much, but I'd be very interested to get other people's feedback on that and their interpretation. So why does stuff happen? Kind regards, Christopher Tom.